to talk to Brother and Sister Daigle, our first district superintendent and his wife, and our very first family. And so it includes not only their ministry themselves, but their family and their dedication to the formation of the district and its future. We appreciate these folks very much. Brother Daigle served our district not only in North Carolina, but all across our fellowship. He went from district conferences to another district conference to promote the need that we have and invite preachers to come and take a look at North Carolina and pray about it, and also visited our Bible schools and encouraged those that were finishing up their Bible school to come and pray about it and come and consider North Carolina. And so he got to meet a lot of people and was able to get the mission and the burden out to many souls that otherwise we would have never known at all. Their family traveled across the state together and across the country, traveling to general conferences, and the whole family was involved. Sister Daigle is going to tell us a little bit about the family experience, but I want her to begin first with what brought them to North Carolina and how the change came about.
Well, Brother Daigle had just finished Bible school. He finished in 1953, and he wanted to do something. Well, in Louisiana, there were very few towns that didn't have a church in it, so there wasn't much of an opportunity to go. And he received in the mail a letter from a man, George Morrow, who was in the Air Force stationed in Charleston, South Carolina, and Brother Morrow enclosed a little apron in there asking for an offering for the church in Charleston. He had found a building to use, but there was no people. I think he had one family that was military. And Brother Daigle answered that and told him that we were interested in going to the East Coast. Louisiana preachers had been out there to South Carolina, North Carolina, all along the coast, and said there were very few churches. And so we desired to do that, and Brother Morrow wrote back, said, "Come." Well, eventually we did come. We sold everything we had, and we loaded a trailer that my father-in-law had built for us out of a pickup bed, and he put a tall cover over it. And we had that loaded. We even had things on top of it. And we had a car loaded, and we had 2 children, and we started out cross country, pulling that with a Plymouth, with a metal bumper across the back. And we didn't know it, but when we got to Charleston, that bumper, which was about probably 14 inches wide, had about 3 inches that wasn't split. But it didn't lose the trailer, so we made it fine. And we got to Charleston, and we spent the first night with Brother Morrow and his wife in a 35 by 8 trailer. He had 2 kids, and we had 2. We spent one night with them, then we got a house. But that was in South Carolina. But we were there for 9 years, and then we moved to North Carolina. We moved in 1965. And the district, I think, was formed later.
69.
In 69. So it was, we were still South Carolina, Georgia, and we were Florida for a while, but they separated. But our desire was to work for the Lord, and Brother Daigle had a degree in accounting. He had a good job, but we left everything and came to Charleston. And when we got there, we didn't know what we had found, but we were able to rent a house that night, didn't we? the day we got into town or the next day, and we started our work there. Brother Morrow was there for a full year. He had a building to use and a few people. But he was there for a full year after we got there, and that was a tremendous blessing. And from there, we began to grow. And at that time, Brother Morrow carried everybody that came to church if they wasn't service personnel and already Pentecost. He carried them in his car. Well, we didn't think we could do that. He not only carried them in his car, he bought groceries for them. And we sure couldn't do that. But we were able to bring some of those people to church. But it was an experience.
When you came to North Carolina, you assumed a pastorate of the church in Wilmington, which at that time was not or had not been a part of the United Pentecostal Church. And so when you took pastorate there, then that changed. And you began the ministry of working in North Carolina. So when the North Carolina district was to be born, it was just the right thing that you step into that place. And by that time, 1969, there was 9 churches, Brother Daigle was telling me, that was in the district. During your tenure as district superintendent and family, the number grew to 38 churches. And you had the opportunity to get to know these new churches and the pastors and the things that were going on in their lives. Now, in your travels across the state, is there anything that sticks out in your mind, maybe about a particular family or a particular church in their early years that you had the privilege to encourage or strengthen? Anything that you would just something special? Because the most of the folks that are going to be listening to us were not here, and they don't know any history unless someone that was here gets to tell them about it. So if you remember something right off the top of your head. We had, while you're thinking about that, we had preachers come from Missouri, Illinois, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Ohio, and I'm sure there were many more. And up to this date, of course, there have come from many other places. But they brought with them some of their traditions and the way that they worshiped and the things they did in their locale where they left and came to North Carolina. So our district is made up of personal experiences from a lot of different places. And I'm sure you met some of that during your travels at the early part.
Well, one particular family that became quite close to us was the Wilt family. It came from Ohio. And he was in the church that was pastored by Brother Pullen, who was a classmate of mine in Bible school. But Brother Wilt came to Jacksonville because he had been stationed there in the Army or the Marine Corps when he was in service. And he started the church in Jacksonville about the time we moved to Wilmington, and we spent quite a bit of time fellowshipping with them, and we spent quite a bit of time helping them reach out to gather new people into their church in Jacksonville. And as a result, I guess Brother Wilt became probably my very best personal friend through the years. And we miss him very much since he's deceased now and gone on to his reward.
Brother Wilt touched North Carolina district in many, many different ways, not just the varied offices that he held through the years, but the church in Lumberton, the church in St. Paul's, church in Spring Lake, and just so many. Those are just places where he planted his feet for a season,
Yeah.
and became very instrumental in helping get the groundwork done. Sister Daigle.
Brother Wilt went to Lumberton, but his vision was every town around there. He didn't just go to one place and say, this is it. But his vision was St. Paul's, Pembroke, I can't tell you the other. Red Springs, Roland, and then Lumberton. And he reached out to each one of those.
He sure did. He influenced so many, and even at youth camp, he was so much fun to the campers.
Yeah.
And entertained them with
yes.
his little magic tricks that he did, and had a story to tell, and encouraged their hearts. There were others that were involved during that time as well, and I'm sure that touched your life, and you were an encouragement to them. I remember when going to a district meeting meant you had quite a drive to make. And then to turn around and get back to church for Sunday morning after a Saturday night youth rally or fellowship rally, it took a dedicated heart. And when those came to North Carolina and to build a church, they didn't come with a job. They didn't come with a paycheck. They came because their heart was in doing something for the Lord. Yes, ma'am.
I can remember more than once we got home in time to get ready for Sunday school. We had to drive. We had Saturday night fellowship meetings because the preachers all worked, and that was the only night available. And I can remember coming in, and I remember one time this young evangelist was a single boy from Pennsylvania, and he was holding revival for us. And we had been to a fellowship meeting, and we had a little English Ford car, 4-door. We had 4 children and him, all in that car. Well, we took I-26, which was not open. The pavement was finished and all the approaches, but it wasn't officially open. And we ran out of gas way out there when there wasn't even much traffic on it. But the Lord provided, and somebody came by and got us some gas. And the reason we ran out of gas is our car wasn't running right. We found out it had something in the gas tank, and the only way to keep it running was just pump it. But that was an experience, but we lived over it. But God has been good to us, and I'm so thankful for everything that we experienced. If we were any help to anybody, it was worth every bit of it.
My dad and mom, when we moved to North Carolina in 1962, we left Texas, and all three of the 4 children had birthdays on the road. I tell folks that's how long it took to get from Texas to North Carolina. Daddy was pulling a trailer similar to what you described, an old pickup bed that had been made into a trailer. And 45 miles an hour was as fast as he could run to keep it from swaying all over the road. And so from the panhandle of Texas to North Carolina took some time.
Yeah.
But the fact was we had birthdays one day, skip a day, and another birthday, and skip a day, and another one. But we went to church in Wilmington after we had moved to Goldsboro. Daddy was starting to work in Goldsboro, and the closest church was for us to drive all the way to Wilmington. And Brother Pridgeon at that time was having services at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I remember my 13th birthday was on a Sunday. We were there with Brother and Sister Pridgeon, or Brother Pridgeon. He wasn't married at that time. His wife had passed away. And the kindness of people and everybody joining in together to worship in the middle of the afternoon, to me that was such an experience as a kid. And then to realize the sacrifices that were being made all across our state. So when the North Carolina district was actually formed, There was 9 churches at that time, and for the most of us, that was quite a number, because that meant the distance wasn't nearly as far from one church to the other. So, in your experiences, and I made just a couple of notes about some of our camp meetings, conferences, Sunday school conference, home missions conference, ladies conference, some of the speakers that were here. And I wanted to mention some of their names because some of them are not with us anymore. And to call their name, and then to have the opportunity at some period to share their story with others, that because they invested themselves in us. Sunday school, home missions, ladies auxiliary, and camp meeting. Brother and Sister James Kilgore were always such a blessing. They were here for different departments because they were such a blessing to us and so kind to come to North Carolina. Brother Wayne Mitchell from Moline, Illinois. Brother Wayne McLean was a tremendous speaker and encouraging the ministry. Brother O.R. Foss, he preached hell so hot you could feel it sitting out there in your seat. And just a tremendous man. He had a way when he looked at you, you wanted to find a hiding spot or put up your hands for protection. But he meant what he said, and he had some tremendous experiences to share. Brother T.F. Tenney, from youth camp to our camp meeting and our district's meetings, was such a blessing to us every time they came. Do you remember some of those events that you'd like to highlight? I remember Sister Tenney and her speaking to the ladies while the whole congregation was there. I mean, it wasn't like they separated and went into a different meeting, but she was such a rich testimony for the goodness of the Lord and the things that they had seen around the country and other parts of the world. There are many that have played a part in our district. Any particular experience in any of our statewide meetings that come to mind that just stand out?
One thing that I think about, and this is not real spiritual, but when Brother Wilt thought about coming to North Carolina, his pastor was a Bible school friend of Brother Daigle's, and him and his pastor came to see us in Charleston. And Brother Wilt promoted a Sunday school drive. And the person that brought a visitor, the child that brought a visitor to Sunday school, got to get something out of a bag. And Debbie, our oldest daughter, brought somebody. So he said, okay, come up here and get your gift out of this bag. Well, Brother Wilt had a paper bag. He had put holes in the bottom and stuck his fingers up in that bag. And when she put her hand down in that bag, he grabbed her with his fingers. She was terrified. But the church loved it, and it was a promotion. He was one of a kind.
Yes, he was. Always had something to share and something to give. He was a rich man in so many ways. Amen. Well, you later went to Clinton and started to work there in Clinton and got it off the ground, and just I'm sure there's a lot of memories from the Clinton experience.
The Clinton experience, to me, surprised me because we made so many friends in town. They wouldn't come to church, but they were our friends. And when our house burned there, they took care of us. We stayed in their home. They furnished us with furniture. And one couple was a man and a woman that had their own place, and they got married, and they gave us what they didn't need. So we was able to furnish a house and move into it. But we didn't see the revival there that we wanted to see, but we did get property. And so there is a church there this day. And I am thankful to have just a small part in any church that we have, because it's souls. Souls are important. That's a forever thing. It's not just for a little while. And I thank the Lord for the privilege to be able to do that.
You know, the Apostle Paul reminded us that some plant, some water, but the Lord gives the increase. And your planting in Clinton may not have seen the increase in the time span that you wanted it to. I can remember preaching a week for you in Clinton, and the effort that was put forth just in that week alone, and then to see the sacrifice. I was there the morning after your house had
Yeah.
burned to the ground,
Yeah.
and just the price that was paid to remain on location. Brother Luther Sanchez is having good revival in Clinton now, and there's been a number there that have watered and planted seed, but your original labor is growing.
Yeah.
And so we always look
Thank you,
back and thank the
Jesus.
Lord for the things that he's done, just a little at a time, and we were privileged to participate in those endeavors. Brother Daigle, would you change anything if you had it to go over again?
Not that I could think of.
Knowing the circumstances of what you
Lots
had
of
to work
things I
with,
would rather not go through again, but
I'm sure.
I believe that everything is worked in the will of God.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. The promises of the Lord are yea and amen. And what he said, that he has done.
Yes.
We appreciate you folks so much. And it's anyone that has reached, I hate to say it this way, but what folks call our senior years, don't seem like they should have gotten here this quick. But we realize that life's experiences will come and go in your mind and in your heart. And there's no way in the world that we can remember all of those special things. But just like we're sitting here, and every once in a while, one of those memories will pop back up again. Such an inspiration to share with others. And that's what we want to do in our celebration, that others realize the price that has been paid. There will be many in our celebration time in the month of May that were only here for a few years. They came with a real burden, and they worked hard, and they committed themselves to it, and for whatever reason, they moved on and someone else came and started again. And we appreciate each one of them. Thank you for your testimony, and wish we had a lot more time. Lord bless you.